Welcome to chapter 2. The first big thing that we look at in this chapter is the whole principle of verbs in Mari. We had some verbal forms already in chapter 1, but now we start having a look at the verbal system in Mari in general, where we meet the first difficult aspect of Mari, the duality of conjugation classes, that every verb belongs to one of two conjugation classes. And in this chapter, we have a look at what determines these two conjugation classes, how can one tell if a verb belongs to the one to the other, what does it mean semantically for a verb to be in one conjugation class or another. You can watch the long form video to get more information on these aspects. We look at, in a superficial manner, at how these two conjugation classes behave in inflection. And we look at how the infinitive is formed in these two conjugation classes. And, this is critical because the infinitive is, unfortunately, if you're a student, the dictionary form of Mari verbs. And I say unfortunately because the infinitive is one of very few forms of the Mari verb where you cannot immediately see the conjugation class. We already have a look at the third person forms, singular and plural. The gray fields you see here, this is just, I'm giving you the whole paradigm for the sake of completeness, but the gray forms are not yet covered in this chapter. They're coming later. And here you see it then also the same paradigms in transcription. And the reason I have these paradigms in transcription is we have some forms in the paradigm where at the beginner, it might look like the verb is irregular because the verb seems to be doing weird things in inflection, but we see no irregularity in the transcribed forms of the paradigms. All the stuff that we see that looks irregular, so to speak, is actually just the peculiarities of the Mari Cyrillic orthography making our life difficult. If you're not acquainted with these aspects, please watch the intro videos on the Russian Cyrillic alphabet and the Mari Cyrillic alphabet. We explain these things in detail there. This is still the same stuff. We discussed the fact in this chapter that Mari does not have a simple continuous distinction as English does. So there's no difference between I read and I am reading. And there is also no grammatical future tense in Mari, not with a strong position at least. There is an auxiliary to ngalash to begin, which in some contexts is used to express future circumstances. We get to that much later. So as a consequence of this, if we have sentences like Tura pertem ishta, here we're talking about a person, she, he, they, building a house. It could be builds a house, let's say she builds a house. It could be she is building a house. It could be she will build a house. Which translation into English makes the most sense? You can only determine this based on context because Mari doesn't distinguish between these three forms in English, basically. Or if we have nuno, gazetem, ujalat, that could be like they sell newspapers or they are selling newspapers. One thing you should note is that in the third person plural, with if we don't have a personal pronoun, just have gazetem, ujalat. So Mari is a pro-drop language. You don't generally have to have personal pronouns, but especially in third person plural, if you don't have a personal pronoun, often an impersonal reading suggests itself. Newspapers are being sold. An unknown they are selling newspapers. This is most probably a Russian influence. You might know this structure from if you have studied Russian, like kak vas zovut, what do you call, literally being what do they in parentheses call you. We meet the accusative case, the case used to mark direct objects in Mari with the ending M, and we see how it is attached to different stems. We meet the genitive case with the ending N, which is also then attached to stems in exactly the same way as the accusative case is. If you are familiar with especially Finnish, something interesting you might know, which we discuss in the slides here too, is the relationship of the genitive and the accusative cases, which in Mari they have separate endings, N and M. In Finnish, they have merged. You have the N is ending of both genitive and accusative, but this is due to sound changes specifically in Finnic languages. This is Finnish doing strange, unusual stuff, but here this is in a case where Maori can help you understand Finnish a bit better. We look at possessive suffixes for now only third person, singular and plural. So suffixes with which you denote a possessor, like their house or whatnot, but not only. In other cases, possessive suffixes are used, like they're used in combination with non-finite verbal forms to express agents, like after their coming or something like that. We also have a lot of non-possessive usages of possessive suffixes, which we will be discussing in the course of the textbook. But yeah, so that we look at the formation, we look at how the possessive suffix third person plural is attached to nominal stems. And we also look at the connection of the possessive suffix third person singular, which unfortunately is a bit tricky. This is this is definitely the most idiosyncratic suffix in Maori inflectional morphology. So the suffix that has the most variation. We discuss it in the long form video. We look at the ordering of possessive suffixes and case suffixes. This is a tricky aspect in Maori because where some Finno-Ugric languages have systematic and consistent ordering, like in Finnish, where you always first have the case suffix and then the possessive suffix, or Hungarian, where you always first have the possessive suffix and then the case suffix. In Maori, you have vacillations, and it depends on the case what the ordering is. So we have the group of the grammatical cases of genitive and accusative, and also the so-called commutative case, which we're going to meet later, where you first have the possessive suffix and then the case suffix. So these suffixes, Maori behaves like Hungarian. Then we've got the local cases, inessive, illative, and lative. The gray fields, we have not met them yet, but we are eventually going to meet them. Here it's the other way around, so they behave like Finnish. And then the dative and comparative cases, which we will meet in due course. Here, either arrangement works. Now that we know possessive suffixes, well, we know 2 of them, but we know that they exist and we can form 2 of the 6 that there are. A look at possessive constructions. In Maori, possessive constructions are often double marked. That we have, if we have Yelu's son, we have Yelu, genitive, son, possessive suffix, third person singular. So both Yelu and the son are marked for their relationship, genitive and possessive suffix. Sergei's daughter, same here. Or if you have Yelu and Sergei's child, sorry, then you also have here a genitive marking on Yelu and Sergei and possessive suffix on the child. Also with pronominal possessors, like tuden batishe or nunen yochasht. And yeah, here we have a look at possessive chains. What do you say if the of yeah. And we also have a quick look at reciprocal possessive relationships where 2 things possess each other. And I say possess with quotation marks because I mean often things that possessive constructions, be it in Maori or in English, don't really denote ownership. Like if you say my friend, you don't own that friend. So after having last week looked at existential clauses, there is not. We are now having a quick look at have constructions. What do the 2 have to do with each other? Well, in Maori, have constructions are basically existential constructions. So we had the construction, there is a God, there is no God. And what you in Maori say, if you want to say a church, I have a church, I don't have a church. You basically say, my church exists, my church doesn't exist. Yeah. After having looked at the ordinal numbers last week, we now have a look at the cardinal number, first, second, third, first, fifth, etc. And the formation of these, yeah, usage is fairly straightforward then. And we also look at how they are rendered in written texts. Words and word usage, what have we got here? Well, we're looking at the months. So for the months, there are 2 calendars that are used in Maori. There is the international one with January, February, March, etc. Here you've got the names, and here you've got the initiative forms of it, and those are used to say in January, etc. And we've also got the folk calendar, which is increasingly being used again, where you have Maori names for the months. I have an overview of these here with their translations. This is not yet in this chapter of the textbook, actually. It comes much later on, and you don't have to actively learn them at this point, but it's good to be aware of them and perhaps to have a look at. Yeah, we're looking at the derivational suffix an, used to form adjectives denoting that something has something, so-called possessive adjectives. Yur, rain, yuran, rainy, having rain. Lum, snow, luman, snowy, having snow. Keche, sun, kechan, sunny, having sun. Erge, sun. Ergan, having a son. You see it's used more widely in Maori than the English e suffix that I've been using is, because you can also have, for example, vich cherle yocha, 5 sick children, vich cherle yochan, having 5 sick children. You can have whole nominal phrases marked with this suffix. Yeah, we have a look at the word den, meaning and, but it's originally actually a postposition meaning with. So if you have Sergei dene kutarem, for example, this is still the dene, the long form, still being used as with. I am talking to Sergei. I'm talking with Sergei, literally. And if I say Sergei den Yelu, sorry, which in modern language would just be Sergei and Yelu, what it actually originally was is with Sergei Yelu. This is common in the languages of the Volga-Kama region to have and being denoted by with in this way. Yeah. And in the text of this chapter, now we're meeting the whole family, where we just saw the little short biographies last week. Now we have a proper description of Yelu and Sergei and their 2 children, Ichan and Anush. So our video also has us going through the exercises. You can work through those. And then for the song of the week this week, we have Marina Sadova singing Avayem Idvurso, Mother, Don't You Scold Me, for doing all the things that an 18-year-old girl does. And she describes herself as 18-year-old in the text. If the text is still a bit too difficult at this point, come back to it in a few weeks. Eventually, it's pretty transparent. So see you next week.